What's up, everybody? We're going to do chapter 23, case histories. This will be probably a couple videos. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to read and then I'm going to look at the main points. All right. So Neville says it'll be extremely helpful here to cite a number of specific examples of successfully applying the law. Actual case histories are given. In each of the cases, the problem is clearly defined. The way imagination is used, but was used to name is fully described. In each of these instances, the author of the book was either personally concerned or told the facts by the person involved. And I will say this before we get into the nitty-gritty of the case studies. There are a lot of different factors about how people used it, the timelines. There's a lot of different factors, and so if you've read the case histories or maybe other people's case histories, and you're thinking that okay, so they succeeded this way, maybe I should like do the same thing. Don't. Like I'm telling you, if you do not get anything else from watching my videos, for now the most important thing is to focus on the fundamental facts that are being established. So where was I? Yeah, very important. Focus on the fundamental facts. And I'll highlight those as we go along in each case history, because those are, I think all of them are the same. They don't change. As long as you pay attention to what Neville Goddard says in this book, they're in line with what he says, with what he said in the first chapter. So all right, so all right, so all right. So the first one is a case study about Neville Goddard and him joining the army. So I'm going to just summarize here. In 1943, he was stationed in Louisiana, and he didn't want to be in the army, but he wanted to honorably discharge. Man, I wish I would have read this when I was in the Air Force. Shoot. Okay. All right. So basically, Neville was convinced. Oh no, we got somewhere to go. The application for the discharge required the approval of the commander, and based on Army regs, the decision of the commanding officer was final. Okay, within 4 hours, it was disapproved. Okay, here's a very important statement. Convinced that he could not appeal the decision to any higher authority, military or civilian, he turned within to his own consciousness, determined to rely on the law of assumption. So here's an important point. Neville first was convinced that he couldn't do anything on the outside anymore. Whether or not he should have started with the inside doesn't matter. But this is just something that I'm summarizing here. To exhaust all options and not rely on consciousness. I think this attitude changes the more Neville preaches, and I guess gets more familiar with the law of assumption. So I'm going to, after this book, I said it before, but I'm going to actually just go over lectures. The later lectures like that he gave towards the end of his life, that's his ideas more finalized than more developed than they were, in the 50s when this book was written. Anyway, so the next main point is that, okay, so he realized that his consciousness was the only reality, that his particular state of consciousness determined the events he would encounter. A quick point, in case anyone is not familiar, I shouldn't have glossed over this. He says that this is a story with every detail of which I'm personally familiar. Later on, he tells the story, and it's him. So that's why I'm saying that this is Neville doing all this. Anyway, so he realized two fundamental facts. His consciousness was the only reality, and his particular state of consciousness determined the events he would encounter. Okay? Those two main things. Just remember those, and remember those. Okay? These two fundamental facts, because he repeats them in different forms in the like 6 case histories that are in this chapter. So again, consciousness is the only reality. It's the base that on which everything is built, and everything is made from consciousness. And your particular state of consciousness or concept of self, same thing, concept of self determines your reality. Okay, because you are whatever you are conscious of being, that is what you are going to experience. All right. So that night, he's using the sleeping method, the SAPS. So that night, in the interval between going to bed and falling asleep, he concentrated on using the law of assumption. So he felt himself in his own New York City apartment, visualized his apartment, mentally picturing with each one of the familiar rooms, with all the furnishings, vividly real. Okay, so he's going into the method here. So with this picture clearly visualized, so he clearly visualized him being in his apartment with all the familiar rooms, something he's been familiar with. So I imagine it was fairly easy to imagine that they were real or that he was already there, which is a technique that you might consider using. There's a book that I read about. It's similar to Neville Goddard's teachings, and I might talk about it in this channel. It's just like how to get rich, and it's like tricking your subconscious by changing a past memory of a success and changing it to the future. Anyway, I'll go over that later. With this picture clearly visualized. Okay, so he's going over the ingredients to this method here. So visualizing a picture, lying flat on his back, completely being physically relaxed, being completely physically relaxed. And then he induced this SATS state. Yeah, and at the same time retaining control of the direction, but just like he's talked about, and the feeling is the secret. So retaining control of your attention. And then when your body was completely immobilized, he assumed that he was in his room. All right, let me stop right here. He assumed that he was in his room. And this is only after these techniques. These are just techniques here. The fundamental facts have already been established. These two, consciousness is the only reality, and this is for this case study. For this particular case study, he established two things at the very beginning, after he set the setting, or gave the background on the situation. Two things: consciousness is the only reality, and then I'm saying this over again. Consciousness is the only reality. Particular state of consciousness or concept of self determines your events that you're going to encounter, your state, your reality. Okay, so those two things those are the first things. Don't get caught up in these techniques. Okay, it's if you believe these, you don't have to do the techniques. But anyway, I just wanted to make that point right now, really quick. Anyway, so he assumed, the reason I stopped here, he assumed that he was in his own room. So he doesn't assume that the feeling, he doesn't assume that he already has what he wants or is the person that he wants. Here he assumed, he assumed what he wanted, that was real. So he assumed that he was in his own room. That's it. And it's as simple as and as difficult as that. Okay, so after this is the first thing that he did. So if you want to use SATS, this is a method that I like personally. So you're assuming that I will say though that I haven't gotten results with SATS, but that might be because of some reason. I'm not worried about it. If it works for you, then so assuming first you are where you want to be, and not he didn't. I mean, he's in the end right now. He's in the end. He's where he wants to be. He's not. He didn't imagine like the document or whatever being approved, his discharge. He didn't imagine that. He went straight to the end. What would it feel like? Sorry, yeah, he went straight to the end of his problem that I wanted to solve. Okay, that's another important point that I don't think I wrote down. Okay. All right, so again, assumed that he's in his own room, felt himself lying in his bed to be lying. So he's already assuming himself to be in a different place and feeling himself to be doing something else. And in imagination, he did the same thing. So he's just continuing this picture in imagination of being somewhere else, feeling something else, and doing things in that other place. So from that other place, rising from the bed, walking from room to room, touching various pieces of furniture. If you're in this, and this is a subjective story, if you're in the sad state and you feel yourself for some reason, or if you can regularly get yourself into the state, that's good. But if you feel yourself into the sad state, don't. There's like a lot of there's like a lot of rules that you'll hear. Only focus on one state. Only do like the scene has to last like 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. That's not important. Okay. What's important is these two things. Okay. Consciousness being the only reality, your state of consciousness determining the events that you'll encounter. Anyway, back to this particular method, this little tiny method. Well, tiny is in it's one of many, because if you have the fundamental facts, then you can basically do whatever you want as long as it's in line with these facts. Anyway, so he's okay. So he's going around. He's imagining himself in his apartment, walking around, touching the furniture. He's going into the window, and he's just going in depth on how he is in the place where he wants to be. He already has what he wants. So he's just oh yeah, I lost track. So if you are in the sad state and you feel yourself in control of your attention and you feel something to be very real, it's okay to do what Neville did here and just go crazy in it. Like feel the situation completely. And that means that your scene may last 10 to 15 seconds more. The important thing is to feel yourself, assume what you want, assume what you want to be, assume that you already are what you want to be. That is the main goal. That is the number one purpose. Okay, so don't get caught up in like the minutia of what you see online. Other YouTubers maybe say this. I don't know. I've heard that other YouTubers are like maybe very misguided. It's funny, I'm on YouTube and I'm talking shit about YouTubers. Just beware. Make sure that you are educated. Imagination. Okay, so yeah, he's going so vivid, and this is something that might happen. So vivid was all this in his imagination that he saw in detail, all the pavement, all the railings, trees, bricks. And then he returned to his bed and felt himself drifting off to sleep. That was his particular scene. He okay. He says this that the most important was in the successful use of the law was that the actual point of falling asleep of the consciousness was to be filled with the assumption that he was already what he wanted to be. He doesn't stress on this in the future in later lectures. So this is the purpose, a tangent. I think I still am of the firm belief that the fundamental facts are what you should pay attention to more. If you follow those, then you'll use the law of assumption correctly, and you'll create your life that you want. Anyway, so all that he did in imagination was based on assumption. Yep, no longer that. Okay, so it was all based on that, all based on whatever you want. Night after night, and then he felt himself honorably discharged, doing the same thing over and over again. So he did this for 8 days, 8 days and 8 nights. And it's important here. I think I skipped. Yeah. So this, I mean, I'm highlighting it here because he says that Neville says in this book that he says the most important, most important part of using the law is that at the actual point of falling asleep, the consciousness is to be filled with the assumption that you're already what you want to be. I can tell from subjective personal experience, that's if you fall asleep feeling a certain thing, then it'll last through the next day, and it'll be easier to persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Okay. Here. Okay, we're already done. All right, so let's wrap up here. So the denouement, the resolution, for 8 days. Okay, he continued to do the same thing over and over again. On the 9th day, orders came from battalion to fill out a new application. And then he was ordered to report. And he doesn't say the full story. I think after, in a later lecture on the 9th day, like on the 8th night, he hears, Neville says he hears like a rejection being crossed out on the papers, and then accepted being written in, and then he hears like some kind of phrase like "it is finished" or "it is done" or something like that, and then he, yeah, I can't remember, but he gives more details in it and other lectures. Okay, shortly after this is done, he wrote, okay, the colonel asked him for sure, and then he disagreed, but he wanted to, but he approved it anyway. So Neville got out of the army in like 10 days, honorably, which is cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop that here. I'm just gonna keep it nice and clean. Tomorrow we'll go over the dynasty, the Goddard dynasty story, about how it started, at least how it was told in this book. So yeah, see you guys later.